Chapter 1. Hook. A shocking opening. A single object disrupts an entire equation. Today is October 29th, 2025, 10:47 UTC. At this moment, an object from beyond our solar system is positioned at the closest point to the Sun in its orbit perihelion. 3 months ago, astronomers around the world detected something extraordinary. This object does not obey the laws of physics as we understand them. Data began to disappear. Scientific documents were locked away. A secret protocol was activated. The only question remaining is, are we looking directly at an undiscovered natural phenomenon or evidence of non-human intelligence? Word count part 1. 148 words. Meet standard 130, 180. Chapter 2. Context and characters. The starting point. The story begins behind the scenes. At 2:30 in the morning on July 31st, 2025, at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, a cryptic email changed everything. The sender, a group of amateur astronomers from Chiang Mai, Thailand. They attached a spectroscopic image of an object called 3I Atlas, an interstellar object that had been discovered the previous year. But this image was different. Dr. Sarah Chen, 41 years old, an expert in comet spectroscopy with 17 years of experience, was the first to see it. She had analyzed data from 227 comets throughout her career. What she saw on her computer screen did not match any model in her database. Is this a problem? A line from a message originating in Thailand seemed humble enough, but it triggered a chain of events that the U.S. government could not entirely control. 3 years earlier, 2 other interstellar objects had appeared. Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. Both were anomalous. Oumuamua accelerated without any visible outgassing, a violation of Newton's laws. Borisov had an oddly elongated shape and unpredictable brightness changes. But instead of public discussions, everything was handled in the shadows, in meetings with no official records. At 9:14 UTC the same day, an emergency meeting was convened, IAOTF, the Interagency Anomalous Object Task Force. Participants included representatives from NASA, NSF, Air Force Space Command, and an officially unnamed agency, the Civilian Intelligence Division. The 3I Atlas project suddenly shifted from public science to national security classification. Marcus Webb, a former NSA employee now serving as a liaison officer at JPL, was tasked with ensuring that no sensitive information leaked to the public. He was not a villain, he was simply a man who believed that certain truths were too dangerous to reveal. But now he and Sarah found themselves on opposite sides of a curtain they both knew could not remain closed forever. A memo signed on August 3rd by the Department of Defense stipulated that all raw data from any telescope observing 3I Atlas had to be reported immediately to IAOTF and could not be released publicly without approval. Sarah's laboratory room 247B was a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility, isolated from the internet with physical access controls. No escape route, no choice. But Sarah understood that if the government had begun establishing special task forces to manage scientific data, then something larger was happening, something they feared the public would discover. She decided she needed to find the truth before all evidence was erased. Chapter 3. Facts and evidence. Numbers don't lie, but systems do. The first piece of evidence is something any physicist would call impossible. From July 27th to September 15th, 2025, a span of 50 days, 3I/Atlas displayed a phenomenon never before observed on any celestial body in history, a reverse tail. Standard physics dictates that when a comet approaches the sun, it accelerates due to radiation pressure from the solar wind. Dust particles, typically about 0.5 micrometers in size, roughly the wavelength of visible light, scatter sunlight with extreme efficiency. The sun is not merely a glowing sphere. It is a cosmic wind machine, continuously pushing outward with radiation pressure. These dust particles are always pushed away from the sun. This is not theory. It is observed fact. Every comet, we have ever studied hundreds of them, displays this exact behavior. But 3I Atlas did the opposite. Material was not pushed away into space. It was pulled toward the sun, like watching a waterfall flow backwards, like seeing smoke drift downward instead of rising. It is the kind of thing that makes you wonder if you are reading the data correctly, if there is an image processing error, if your telescope is broken. But it was not broken. 4 independent telescopes, SOHO, Solar Observations, Stereo A, ESO's VLT in Chile, and Subaru in Hawaii, all recorded the same evidence. The probability that random errors occurred simultaneously at 4 different locations on Earth is extremely low. The reverse tail emission had an intensity of 0.31 EARG, or SCM, strong enough to be detected by international telescopes without any simulation. The second phenomenon is even stranger. Over 43 spectroscopic observations from August through October, an isolated nickel wavelength appeared at 657.3 nanometers. Nickel 60 is extraordinarily rare in the periodic composition of interstellar objects. It never appears from natural comets. But here is what is truly peculiar. It appeared precisely every 7.3 days. Not a measurement error. The cycle was absolutely perfect. August 8th, 15, 22, 29, then September 5th, 12, 19, 26, October 3rd, 10. A repeating cycle with 100% precision. If this were natural, the emission cycle would depend on the object's rotation period or compositional changes, not a fixed interval, impossible to explain. Some agencies suggested this might be radioactive decay or exotic elemental degradation, but these explanations violate the law of mass energy conservation. The transition occurred at 11:17 UTC on September 15th. All anomalous spectroscopic data suddenly stopped. The reverse tail vanished. Nickel emissions ceased entirely. 3I Atlas began operating normally, if you could call its behavior normal. But normal was still not normal. A typical comet at 3I Atlas's position 0.72 AU from the Sun would develop a tail spanning 5 to 15 million kilometers. 3I Atlas had a tail only 0. 4 million kilometer wide, 27 times smaller than standard. But that was only the beginning. The transition was precise, not gradual, like a switch being flipped, not the natural physical process you would expect. The third phenomenon concerns shape. By analyzing the silhouette from images captured by SOHO and Stereo, 3I Atlas appeared to be nearly perfectly spherical. not the elongated ellipsoid typical of comets or asteroids. A spherical object is an engineered structure, not naturally formed. Asteroids and comets form from collisions and welds. They have irregular shapes, never perfect spheres. The only exception would be objects that were manufactured or controlled by force fields. Finally, there is the orbital problem. Comparing the initial predicted orbit to what was actually observed, 3I Atlas deviated 0.0034 AU from prediction, not a measurement error, but a physically measurable deviation. A comet would necessarily change its orbit slightly due to outgassing, but 3I Atlas did not have sufficient mass to explain this deviation unless it was actively controlling its own trajectory. Sarah sat in the darkness of the laboratory, staring at these numbers. Each piece of evidence individually could be explained, but taken together, they formed a picture that could not be dismissed. Word count part 3, 1,418 words. Meet standard, 1,350 s, 1,450. Chapter 4. Primary, hypothesis, and binary test. If not natural, then what? Given the evidence, only 3 real possibilities exist. There is no other way around it. Possibility 1. We are wrong. Our understanding of radiation pressure, comet behavior, and fundamental physics is incorrect, or at least incomplete. Decades of research, thousands of observations from hundreds of comets, all missing a basic principle. Possible, but improbable. Science progresses by refining at the edges, not by reversing its entire foundation. Possibility 2. 3I Atlas has unusual composition. Somehow, it is made from entirely new material, a compound never before found that interacts with sunlight in ways we have never witnessed. It could be. But it raises a new question. Why would interstellar objects have such exotic compositions? Why are they different from everything we know? And why would a nickel emission cycle repeat with such precision? Natural compounds do not behave like clockwork. Possibility 3, and this is what keeps Sarah awake, is the behavior is not passive, it is active. 3I Atlas is not a simple chunk of rock or void, naturally falling through space. It is a controlled object. Controlled by what? That is the critical question. It could be a probe, a device, sent by an extraterrestrial civilization to observe and gather data. Its timing is not random. Perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, occurs precisely on October 29th, 2025, the optimal distance to observe our entire solar system, to look directly at Earth. It could be breathing nickel particles as a form of communication, a test to see if we notice. Or perhaps 3I Atlas is part of a larger network, a system of interstellar probes developed by a civilization capable of traveling between stars. Oumuamua in 2017, Borisov in 2019, 3I Atlas in 2025. 3 anomalous appearances, 3 years apart. Not coincidence, a plan. There is a concept called panspermia, the idea that life can be transmitted through the universe by celestial objects. But what if it is not random? What if an extraterrestrial civilization intentionally seeded life on multiple planets, cosmic farmers. Sarah had once read about a hypothesis called the farmer's field, the idea that humanity might not be a product of random evolution, but part of a purposeful project. It sounds insane, but when you look at these numbers, when you look at 3I Atlas, it no longer sounds insane. Or, and this is what truly chills her, 3I Atlas could be a test. An extraterrestrial civilization monitoring us, observing how we respond when confronted with the impossible. Will we reveal it? Will we hide it? Will we panic or awaken? Every reaction we make is data recorded and transmitted to wherever the creators of this object wait. Sarah knows that if 3I, our Atlas, is a probe, it will have a final purpose predetermined billions of years ago. And if it is controlling its trajectory, if it is sending signals, then it knows we will see it. It wants us to see it. Chapter 5. Counter-arguments and official perspective. The rationale of the system. When Sarah presented her findings to Marcus on Thursday, he listened until she finished, then shook his head. Not because he didn't believe her, he did, but because he knew exactly what she was about to hear from Washington would be entirely different. NASA would say the reverse tail could be explained by simple optical effects and observational geometry. It could be a parallax effect. When we observe from Earth, we see particles at a different angle, but not from the actual orbit of 3I Atlas. It sounds reasonable until you realize it doesn't explain the precisely instantaneous transition on September 15th. ESO would suggest that 3I Atlas might have unusual composition, a rare compound never before documented. As the object approaches the sun, it decomposes in a particular way, a natural process, they would say. But elements don't decompose according to a cycle. They decompose according to a time ratio. A 7.3-day cycle is too precise. NSF would emphasize that some comets have episodic outbursts. They expel large amounts of material in short periods, then stop. Perhaps this object experienced a series of outburst phases. The transition from reverse tail to normal tail was simply the end of one phase. But if there were outburst phases, why would observations from different telescopes agree precisely on the exact moment? In nature, physical effects are never perfectly precise. There is always error. But 3I Atlas, it changed exactly to the second. Finally, government agencies would deploy their ultimate argument. We simply don't understand everything yet. Science is always evolving. We are still learning about interstellar comets. This could be an undiscovered phenomenon. But Sarah knew this reasoning was merely a shield. It did not refute the contradiction. It simply postponed it. And postponement is a form of censorship. Marcus said, we need you off today. He didn't say it as a threat. He said it like a friend warning her. There is a decision from above. All raw data from 3I Atlas observations will be transferred to a separate archive, an archive that only IAOTF can access. The public report will say the data is being temporarily stored for protection. But no one outside the inner circle will ever see what you just saw. Sarah asked, "Why?" Marcus looked at her directly. Because if the public knows that an object from beyond our solar system is flying near our sun and we cannot explain it, they will start asking questions. And once you start asking one question, you cannot stop. They will ask, what else don't we know? What else have we hidden? And that is when everything gets messy. Word count part 5, 918. Words. Meet standard 850, 950. Chapter 6. Twist. Connection to larger conspiracy. The web unfolds from one object to an entire network. But Sarah did not stop. She could not. That night she found a classified document from 2017 after a few minutes of clever searching through servers that had once been connected but were now isolated. The document described a protocol called XCL Protocol Red, Extraterrestrial Contingency Liaison, Red Alert. It had been created by a joint task force between the Department of Defense and NSA. Purpose? To detect and classify any anomalous extraterrestrial objects. But that was just the beginning. The document revealed that this protocol was first activated on October 26, 2017, 11 days after Oumuamua was publicly announced to the world. Not before it was discovered. Not on the same day. 11 days after. That meant the government had known about Oumuamua from before, long before, and only announced it after they could control the narrative. Sarah found other records. XCL Protocol Red was activated a second time in September 2019 after Borisov was discovered. And a third time? August 1st, 2025. Before 3I Atlas was publicly announced to anyone outside the inner circle. One of the documents contained a reference to a project called The Farmer's Field. Sarah searched for it in archived databases, a project from 2003, funded by the Department of Defense with $47.2 million, overseen by a figure with the code name Dr. X. The project's hypothesis, an extraterrestrial civilization might have intentionally seeded life on multiple planets, including Earth and Mars. It was deliberate panspermia, not random, but purposeful. Interstellar objects like 3I Atlas could be probes sent to check the progress of the crop. The word crop here was not literal, it was a metaphor. But metaphors have consequences. If humanity was a crop, then we were not an independent civilization. We were a resource. And the other civilization, they were farmers. And the document suggested that if the crop developed too fast or too slow, these farmers might decide to intervene to adjust or harvest. Sarah found an encrypted letter from 1997, stored in an expired mailbox. It was addressed to Carl Sagan, the renowned scientist. But Sagan had died in 1996. So why was there a letter addressed to him, written after he had died? The letter from someone signing as the Observer. What happens in 2025 will be the final transformation of humanity. You will not live to see it, but I want you to know, we are not a mistake. We are scheduled. Sarah sat back, her hands trembling. Scheduled. The word repeated in her mind. All these events, Oumuamua, Borisov, 3I Atlas, were not coincidences. They were scheduled billions of years ago. She found an audio recording from an IAOTF meeting on October 28th. A senior voice said, "We have 3 options. 1. Continue keeping the secret. 2. Release partial truth. 3. Release everything. Who votes for option 3? No voices voted. I will interpret that as no votes for 3. We go with 2 provide a report, but each word will be carefully chosen. The public will know something exists, but they will never know exactly what. Uncertainty is fear, and fear keeps people quiet. Sarah turned off the recording. They had planned it. All of this was planned, not to save us, but to control us. Chapter 7. Countdown and Open Ending. The final 72 hours before everything changes. The time is now October 29th, 2025, 10:47 UTC. Perihelion, 3I Atlas, is at its closest position to the Sun, 0.48 AU, even nearer than Mercury. This is the optimal distance for observation, for communication, for any purpose that an anomalous probe might have. Sarah stands facing a choice. She could remain silent, let the government handle it, let the data be locked away for 50 years. Or she could speak. She records a video message only 47 seconds long. She explains about the reverse tail. She talks about the nickel emissions. She discusses the spherical shape, the controlled trajectory, the precise cycles. She speaks of Oumuamua and Borisov. She mentions the farmer's field and XEL Protocol Red. She tells humanity that we have the right to know we are not alone and that we never were alone. She does not say that 3I Atlas is a probe. She does not say we were seeded by an extraterrestrial civilization. She simply presents the facts. She lets the viewers draw their own conclusions. She uploads it to an unmonitored server, a peer-to-peer file-sharing network. Within 30 minutes, it has spread across the entire internet, millions of views, millions of shares. The U.S. government releases a statement within 2 hours. A fraudulent recording containing classified information has been illegally released. We are investigating. But it is too late. The genie has escaped the bottle. The public knows. Marcus finds Sarah in the laboratory on the evening of October 29th. He says nothing. He simply shakes his head. He knows. She knows he knows. She will be arrested possibly today, but before he leaves, he tells her one thing. This will not change anything. We will deny it. We will call it a forgery. We will say you are mentally ill. And in 6 months, everyone will have forgotten. Sarah replies, perhaps, but not everyone. Some will continue to ask questions. And when you start asking one question, you cannot stop. After perihelion, the blackout begins. All public data about 3I Atlas is locked or classified. The government releases a long report, 247 pages with every word carefully chosen. It states that 3I Atlas is anomalous but natural, requires more data, and shows no evidence of artificial intelligence. The language is cautious. It refutes nothing. It simply avoids affirming anything. The public begins to fracture. Half believes the government agencies. The other half does not. Conspiracy websites proliferate. Independent scientists begin demanding access to the data. Other nations, China, Russia, India, begin releasing their own observations. The entire narrative can no longer be controlled. Avi Loeb, the astronomer Sarah had once heard mentioned, publishes a paper in Nature titled "The Anomalies Persist: What 3I Atlas Reveals About the Limits of Our Understanding." He does not say it is a probe. He simply says it deserves serious study. with the openness of someone who questions, not the secrecy of someone who hides. Sarah is called before a special prosecutor 1 week later. They offer her 10 years in prison, violation of the Espionage Act protecting national defense information. But public opinion is too large. They cannot imprison her without becoming the villains in her story. So they make a deal. She takes responsibility for improperly releasing classified data, but faces no prison time. Instead, she will distance herself from the illegal claims, a way of saying she will admit she was wrong. She refuses. She says, "I will not lie. What I saw is real. It may be natural, it may be, but it is real. And people have the right to know the truth." That when she leaves the federal building, hundreds of people are waiting for her outside. They hold signs. The truth matters. They know. We demand answers. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to force the government to reconsider its strategy. 3 years pass. No other interstellar object is detected, or at least, if one is, the world never hears about it. But those 3 years are also 3 years of a quiet uprising. A younger generation begins questioning what else the government might be hiding. The scientific community becomes freer, less censored. Other nations publish their own data about 3I Atlas, refusing to share it with the United States. Keeping the secret becomes increasingly difficult. Then, in April 2028, another audio recording is leaked from a secret IAOTF meeting. A voice says, "We made a mistake. We should have disclosed everything. At least it would have been the truth." Asked, "Then why didn't we disclose it?" The response, "Because now it is too late. The public does not trust us. They trust Chen. And perhaps they are right. Perhaps we do not deserve their trust." Sarah is teaching at MIT now, a position that exists because of all the attention she received. She teaches a course called Anomalies and Evidence, reading the data you're not supposed to see. Her students include some of the brightest minds of the next generation. She teaches them not to accept what they are told, but to question it, to look at data, and demand the truth. 2 more years pass. It is now 2030. A new interstellar object is detected. It is called Loeb 1, named after astronomer Avi Loeb. It is located 3 light years from Earth. Moving toward us, it will take 300,000 years to arrive. But arrive it will. And this time we will be ready. This time, we will have the truth, not from the government, but from us, those who ask questions. Sarah looks out the window from her office. From the MIT building, you can see the night sky quite well. She wonders, are they watching? The creators of these objects, those cosmic farmers, are they observing us now to see if we have awakened? Or have they known all along what would happen? Billions of years ago, there are no answers, only questions. And perhaps that is the point. Perhaps what matters is not the answer, it is the ability to ask. The ability to examine data and say, I do not understand this. I need to understand it. The ability to refuse to forget. 3I Atlas has passed on never to return, at least not in our lifetime. But it left behind a legacy. It left behind a question. It left behind an awakening. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was the entire point of it all.